Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and I thought we'd do a nice little winter painting now that the cold weather is upon us. At least it is in my area. I'm using a sheet of 12 by 16 Bockingford 140 cold press. Comes on a pad, and it's 12 by 16. So I'm starting by brushing down the upper half of the paper just with clean water. And we're going to dip into a little bit of raw sienna and just make some random brush strokes here. Nothing particular. There's no practice. We just or reasoning behind it. Just want to make a good random looking good sky. So I'm just kind of randomly dabbing this in here. Put a little bit of yellow in there, a little bit of cad yellow, just to brighten it up a little bit. Now I'm going to take some ultramarine blue. I'm going to clean my palette a little bit here first. And take a little bit of ultramarine blue. And mix it with a little bit of a alizarin. Kind of want to get a little bit of a purpley tone to it. Not too purple. And again, just random dabs for clouds. You know, the quicker you kind of do this and the more random you make it, the more natural, the better it'll come out. And by the way, I'm probably at about a 10% angle on my board here. I haven't been painting on the easel at, a vertical angle because a lot of times the paint runs down when you don't want it to. So I've kind of adapted to this more flat look. Now I've added a little bit stronger colors of paint here, the red and the ultramarine, a little bit of Payne's gray. So I'm going to do like 3 layers of clouds here. So you can work on this for about 2 or 3 minutes while it's wet, especially on cotton paper. It'll stay wet a little longer. You want to keep those little yellow areas open as much as you can. Don't close all of those off because that's where you're going to get your light from. And remember, clouds get a little smaller as they go down the page. I don't know what it is about this pattern where I have like one from the left, one from the right. I can't seem to get away from it. We all have our little quirks and things that we do. Now I'm using the same colors here, and I'm making a little bit of a mountain, wet and wet. A little bit of ultramarine blue. So still with wet and wet here, we want that mountain in the back to look soft. If you wanted a harder, more sharper edge, you would you take a hair dryer and dry it first. Now you see, I'm still getting a little bit of a cascade from the clouds. Now I put the same purple down on the bottom, and it's a little heavy, so I'm just giving it a quick spray with the spray container, the spray gun. I don't want it to be entirely white. I'm giving it just a little purple of a tone, just because I want the snow to look a little bit like it's sort of reflecting the sky a bit. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of that out of there. So ordinarily I'd probably dry the top with the hair dryer, but since I can work on the bottom while the top dries, I'll just go ahead and let that dry. So just a little bit of dabbing around with the hake. You can see from the camera I've got a good sheen on there. Now my paint ran down a little bit here, more than I wanted to up at the top. So I'm just going to take my hake and I'm going to dab away some of that. But I'm also going to use that to lift some paint out to create a little bit of a cloud. I mean, you can use a tissue for that. You can use the hake brush, and it'll just create a little bit more of a cloud formation on top. Give it a little more dimension. So I'm going to give this a quick dry now. Everything's pretty much in place. Just dab a little more of that out. I'm going to dry this for a couple minutes. I'm going to edit it out so you don't have to see the whole thing. So we pretty much got everything where we want it. Now I'm going to switch over to the fan brush. This is the medium fan brush. This one here, it's a stiff fan brush. I like using it for pine trees. And basically you want a fan brush. If you want one like this, it's made by Zem. Z-E-M is the name of the company, Zem. I got them from Amazon. It was like either a 3 or a 5 pack. And if you get the real soft ones, they don't really have the same, they don't really make the same pattern. So I like the ones that they're very stiff. They're almost like nylon-y almost. Almost like the ones you would get for like oil painting, really. The real soft ones, I don't know, they kind of separate, and I don't even see a use for those, honestly. Not really sure what they can be successfully used for. For me, I got to have this more bristly, stiff fan brush. So I'm making a little green mixture, a little stronger toward the blue side. Ultramarine blue, cad yellow hue, and Payne's gray. Those are my go-to for making greens. And they're a little more realistic, I think, than any of the store-bought greens. I'm not really a fan of Hooker's green or really Viridian or any of those. They look okay in certain situations. Like if you're doing an urban landscape, you could do certain cool things. But if you want it to look realistic for a landscape, you got to stick with the earth tones and the more muted colors, like make your own greens. You know, the 6 or 7 colors that I typically use for this. Your alizarin crimson, your light red, which light red is a Winsor & Newton color. It's not one you can find in any of the other brands. You can find something similar, but it's kind of an English landscape type color that's used, from my understanding. And then, of course, burnt umber. I like to use a Van Dyke brown. It's like a darker brown. And we also have, let's see, we have ultramarine blue, Payne's gray, which is a black with blue in it. And you can use a neutral tint, which is good. Again, the same greens very faintly back here. We're just using the edge of the fan brush to make sort of a distant tree line. And that'll push things back and create dimension and a bit of perspective going back, a bit of scale. Then, of course, there's the yellows. You have your raw sienna. You can use yellow ochre. Raw sienna is more of a transparent color compared to yellow ochre. Someone was asking me, why do you use yellow ochre instead of raw sienna, being that I've, watched Ron Ranson for a long time. I don't know. I kind of started using it, and I liked the way it looked in the paintings, and just to be different, too. Just a different combination. But I do keep raw sienna on my palette. So I do use it still. Now this here, I'm going with a burnt sienna and a burnt umber. I've started keeping burnt sienna on my palette because it's a warmer brown. So I like to keep a couple of yellows, a couple of browns, a couple of blues, and a couple of reds. So it gives me a little bit of different color combinations I can go. So just some little foliage, little shrubbery, things are kind of dormant in the wintertime. So you have things like sort of turning brown, I don't want to say dead because we're not really painting dead things, but, more dormant. Your grass goes dormant, your little blades of grass sticking out, they kind of turn brown. They almost take on a wheat type color, which you can do here. If you go more toward the raw sienna, you can do a little bit more of a wheat sort of a color. So this is just random here. I'm just kind of going with the slope of the ground, and I'm just dabbing in. There's no plan here. I'm just doing what looks good to me. That's something I don't know if I can really pass on as I'm doing a painting. I think after you do enough paintings, you kind of have an idea of where you can put things. And another thing you have to do is, like, if you're driving around, walking around, whatever you're doing, look at scenes and try to subconsciously file them in your mind, like little elements. And later on, they'll recall like a file in your mind. By the way, I'm taking my pinky here and I'm just scraping away a little of the paint. Wait till the paint is dried. Not dried, but sat there for about 30 seconds, maybe to a minute. And you can scrape it. If you do it too soon and you try to scratch it, it'll fill in. So if it's too wet, you don't want to scratch it. Same thing goes for rocks too. So again, I'm just doing the foliage, with a burnt umber, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna combination. Maybe a little yellow ochre mixed in. So that little combination, just to vary up things on the ground. When you're walking in the wintertime and you see in the snow, there's always like these brown wheat or brown colored things sticking out of the ground, out of the snow, unless it snows real heavy and covers all of it. But there's always those little things sticking out. So that's what I'm attempting to do, and then scratch in a few rocks with the card. Now, not all rocks and not all paper is created equal. A lot of people, want to know about rock scraping. Your card, some cards, the edges are too sharp. It's just, you find the right card, hang on to it. There's certain cards that'll do better, and then there's certain papers that do better with scraping. And this one here is pretty good, I think. It depends. Like Arches is not as good for me in scraping. Like Fabriano is one of the best scraping papers as far as looks go. But this Bockingford's not bad. And I've only done a couple paintings on this Bockingford. It's a little harder to get. I guess it's an English paper, so I know it's one Ron Ranson liked to use, but I'd buy more of it, honestly. It's not too expensive. It's a nice paper, and I think the results are pretty good. So I'm trying to do a little shadow thing here. It's not a big thing I always do, but I thought it'd be kind of neat considering the time of year. So when you do a shadow, you don't want to do just black or gray. It won't look right. You have to do like a purpley, a dark purple color, like a alizarin, ultramarine blue, Payne's gray combination. And your shadows will look more realistic. If you do something black, it'll just take over the whole picture. Matter of fact, you never really want to use black anyways. But you don't want to use anything black or like really dark. It'll just take over the whole picture. As long as tonally it's darker than the thing that you're doing the shadow of, it will probably be fine, although it should lean more toward I'd say the purpley, like mauvey, dark mauvey type color. And really, I shouldn't be doing it with the fan brush. The Hake brush lends itself more to doing a quick stroke of the shadow, but what can I say? I'm just too lazy to switch brushes. But a quick sweep across with a wet Hake is the better way to do shadows. And really, you should dry the whole scene. If you're really going to do shadows, get out the hairdryer, dry the whole piece, and then you want to do your sweep of your shadow over the top. So this way, it you can see through. If you do it while it's wet, it'll blend into the paints there. You won't have as good of a result. So it's better to dry your painting, do a quick sweep across to make your shadow of that purpley color. Practice just doing a shadow sweep across on a piece of blank paper. It's the best way to do it. I'm probably reluctant to do shadows because sometimes they take over the picture in a way, and then the other thing is that you do this whole painting and then you do a shadow and it ruins the whole thing. So it takes a lot of bravery when you get to the end of your painting to say, okay, I'm going to start throwing in some shadows, and then they don't look right. So I'm just going to scratch in some little sticks and things in this little cluster of pines over here. And I've done some other little things in the snow there. I've done a few other little strokes across just to kind of break it up. You can leave as much white as you want, but sometimes a little bit and you get the idea. So it's a balancing act for sure. A little bit of brown here, a little bit of green here. There's a harmony to it to make a pleasing picture. So I'm going to break out the hairdryer again, dry this one. Okay, now that that's dry, I'm going to pop in a couple little birds and any last minute little things while I have. This is a jelly roll type pen that has black in it. So I kind of like this. I mean, I was using the Micron pens, but these jelly roll ones will do just as well too. And they don't look like ink pen ink. Let's see what it looks like with a... It's hard. I don't have a lot of matte. This matte came in like an IKEA frame. And it just happens to fit this. Give you an idea of what it looks like. I like to look at them with the matte on there and see if there's anything that I can do toward the end. Now, another thing I've been doing is one of the silliest things, but signing my paintings, I always feel like I sign them in the wrong place or they never look right. I got this marker. I was using the white jelly roll, but sometimes they're just not good for signatures, so I got this acrylic pen, and it's a white marker. I like signing in white, but this one's acrylic. And you shake it, and then you push down the nib, and then the ink, paint, whatever, starts to flow. So I kind of like that for signatures. So here is the final painting. I hope you enjoyed this one. Here it is in its matte. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate all your support. Have a great week.